Hola, bon dia a tothom.
Hello, good morning to everyone. Welcome to the KBR. Those of you who are here and those of you who are following us online. It's a pleasure to introduce JOJAKIM, CORTIS and ADRIAN Sonderegger, who are going to tell us about their project Icons. And this is within the festival Panoramic, directed by Andres Hispano, which you will be able to see until the 27th of November. We have this event. And before we pass the floor to them and listen to them, I'll just give you a very brief introduction and presentation to present the project. They began to work together around 2005 when they were finishing their photography studies at the School of Beaux-Arts at Zurich. And Icons has been to date the most important project that they've been involved in. They've been involved in it for several years. It's had extraordinary recognition, exhibitions in internationally known spaces in Berlin, Winterthur, the Vevey Festival, Panoramic. There's a long list of exhibitions, and they began to work on this series around 2012. And the basic idea was to reconstruct the history of photography through the mise en scène of certain images or icons, iconic images. And well, because they were considered initial histories of photography, or because they had been associated with certain historic events that were very important. And through these pictures, we've got used to thinking about these events through photography, but they've also dramatized. They've also staged, reconstructed pictures, photographs that have been important in art. For instance, Henri Cartier-Bresson, the decisive instant or moment, or the Rhine River, photographed by Kurski, which fetched the highest price that a picture has ever had, and that was the picture that began the project, if I'm not mistaken. So the Icons project was based on this development of icons and their association and the iconic nature of certain photographies, and those that are historical or pictures that have been seen by millions of people, but not just in books, magazines, posters, but also in other kinds of media, all kinds of objects. So these are pictures, images that have been admired, they've been followed, but they've also led to debate. They've led to doubts, concerns, parodies, criticism, everything. So it's this iconicity is built on many different threads. There are many different threads in this process, and these patterns lead to all kinds of places and allow you to think about many different things that have to do with everything. And icons is, I think, not only has to do with the issue of, well, with the fact that any photography is an act of construction, but also the project opens up many different lines, how our imagination is built, how we interpret a photograph, the materiality of pictures, and also when we look at the book as a whole, how we construct the history of photography, what canonical patterns exist, what different channels of circulation have had to do with the distribution of all these pictures, and why certain pictures have been more distributed than others, etc. And I don't think it's by chance that they decided to work on using the concept of diorama, which was present before photography itself was invented and has become popular in many museums. You've probably seen a lot of pictures from the history of natural, the Museum of Natural History of New York, and the book is called Double Take. Double Take. Quite curious, because it reminded me of a book of the 1980s that was devoted to copies and repetitions by Richard Whelan, which is well, similar in a way to the desire to reflect about the dimension of icons in photography, repetitions, copies, etc. And if I mention these examples, and I don't want to go on for much longer, I'll pass the floor to them. But all the work of these photographers is extraordinarily interlinked. There is an interlinking between different spheres of reality, different meanings, so much so that sometimes it gives you makes you feel kind of dizzy. There's so much content. There is, and the subtle way in which things are put together, the humor sometimes that is present in all these, in the way they present their work. And that does not mean that they renounce complexity, quite the opposite. And it's interesting to see how this simulation is prepared in a kind of scientific almost way. It's necessary to simulate before you can understand. I won't go on any longer. I'll pass the floor to them. They'll talk to us about it, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end if there are questions in the room or online, or any other comment that is suggested to you by this work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martha.
Yes, thank you for this introduction, and thank you for the invitation to be here and are able to show our work here in Barcelona. As Martha already said, we started our collaboration in 2005 and 2006. What you see here is actually our first image that we took together, and you also see some points which are really important for our work afterwards. It's a fake, and it's humor, and that's also how the first picture of the icons started. When we graduated school, we worked as photographers for photography jobs, and I think it was 5-6 years after that, during a summer when there was no money coming in, we had this idea to make a new project, an own project. So we had this, I think, more silly idea to reconstruct the most expensive photographs. During that time, it was Andreas Gursky's Rhine 2. It was the most expensive photograph they sold, and it was the beginning of the abstraction in Gursky's work, and it's also digital retouched, so it's also not quite true. And we started to reconstruct this. It's also not really true, but we took materials from model shops, like railway model shops for the grass, and plastic foil for the water. So after that, when we finished this reconstruction, we took a picture and we thought, okay, it works. It's a copy of the original, but it's not more. So the day after, we started to make a documentation of this picture, and we step a little bit back, where you see all the surroundings from our studios, where you see also the materials we use. You see the tools, so you get a clue how our picture is made. And after that, we thought, okay, it's working. What's the next image? So there's a list of the most expensive photographs, and the next one was from Cindy Sherman.
Cindy Sherman was on the second and the third rank, and yeah, it was kind of too difficult for us to reconstruct figures and persons. So we had to sit down and think about the idea to copy the most expensive photographs again, and had the idea to take iconic photographs. Everyone knows, everyone has his in his mind. It's kind of collective memory. It's a culture. It's the visual culture of a generation also. And while we were thinking about iconic photographs, we took again the history of photography book from our student years, and went to the very first one, to Nicéphore Niepce from the year 1826, the start of photography. It's an image where when you stand in front of it, you see nothing. It's this is a reproduction, and we started to reconstruct this, but in a quite bricolage way. It's very handicrafted. It's not really professional model making. Just two guys sitting there and want to copy this image. And copy means to transform it back to three-dimensional. Because photography, if you take it, it takes the room, it takes space, transform it to two-dimension, and we had to do the process back again. Yeah, and so the project had a new start with just iconic photograph, and that's why the title of the project is Icons.
I mean, also for the iconic photographs, there was the problem that there are going to be pictures with people on it, and this will be really hard for us. We knew that. So at the beginning of the project, we really avoided to work on pictures with people. And when there would be people, then there's maybe only like a silhouette, like the example you see here, or maybe a person that it's masked, or just the back of a person. So we thought, okay, we have to do these pictures with people, but let's do it later. So the next one is not a classical iconic image, but it's the iconic cowboy, where you would see this image also without Marlboro. You would know, okay, it's the advertising from Marlboro. So here you see also how we get from this two-dimensional to three-dimensional. Here you have really the copy from the original, and then we start to deconstruct the image. That means we look carefully at every detail. We really start to study the whole image and thinking about how we can simulate the grass and everything else. So it's getting more and more three-dimensional. The photograph gets more to an object that's that stands in the room. And this is our final image, where we optimize the light, and normally we work on a picture like that 1 to 2 months. It depends on which picture it is. And here in the making of, you see the different layers from the picture. So we need for these settings, we need space to the back to set the light, because the light is really important. And at the end, we take a picture from the setup and we get back to two-dimensional.
Next image is from the 1960s. It's Ansel Adams. Real landscape, real black and white photograph. Those who are into photography, they know that he was the master of the dark room, of the halftones. And this image is Moon and Half Dome. This is our reconstruction. And if we compare this to the early beginning with the Gursky and Niepce, you see that we have gotten much better in the bricolage we are doing. We were like two mad guys who were like really enthusiastic about every detail. So we really work on it until the other one has to say, stop, it's okay, it's okay. Now we are at that point that it's really perfect. Here again, like a making of image where you can see that we work in the beginning with raw materials, and especially with this image we needed to make a research about how it looked like there. So how is this mountain looking, because no one of us has been there, and we had to do like a scientific or a research, like a police officer. Yeah. So we really need to do research about how this space looked like. Yeah.
And often it's, I mean, the theme of the work is photography, but I think photography is also a little part of it, because it's also painting, and these are all things we didn't really learn. We didn't learn it at school, so it came during the process of working on this project. We got better in painting, and I think you also see that when you see our work in the order we produced it, starting with the Hawaiian 2 by Andreas Gursky, and then you have maybe the Napalm Girl. Yeah, it's quite its own history. So the next picture you see here was actually probably one of the first images we had on our list to do, because it's one of the most famous iconic photographs. But we were actually a little bit afraid to do it, because there are many people on the picture, It's a real serious, it's a real sad picture, and we were afraid that we couldn't do it well enough, because if you do it not well enough, the people look maybe ridiculous, and we wanted to avoid it really hard. So this is our version of this picture, and for this picture also it was hard to simulate the style or the quality of the original photograph, because the original photograph is black and white, is grainy, had grain in the picture, and there's a movement there's some blur. So for this picture we worked with a glass in front of the setting, and we put some color spots on it. Really, I mean, probably you don't see it on the TV, but if you see like the original photograph in our size, then you see what I mean. And also the movement, the whole set is moved by a hand, which you can slightly see on the left. So you see it, it's like, these are only details, but for us it's very important. So here you see also the thing that our studio is not that big, so we have to cheat a little bit. So we have to shorten the perspective, so the road is getting to one point, and you can also try to use the light to make that more clear. And yeah, the materials we use for that image is clay. It's what do you call it? Fimo?
It's polymer clay.
Yeah.
Oven hardening clay. Yeah.
Yeah. And the road is plaster and paint, and yeah, after a while, we got like a little bit experience what materials we have to use. At the beginning, it was also more try out and see, yeah, what's working and what's not working. Yeah, and cotton wool for the clouds is you find in almost every image we do.
The history of iconic images is connected to the history of photography and also by media. The Hindenburg disaster from 1936 was covered for the media, for the news, really good, because the journalists have waited for the Zeppelin to land. And this was also one of the first images that was transferred to Europe after this happened. So it's really this image stands not only for the accident, for the Hindenburg disaster, it also stands for the distribution of photography. And this is our reconstruction. You see in the front is a box of a model kit. At the beginning, we worked with what we found also on eBay. If there was like a tank or a Zeppelin or a plane, we ordered it and had to repaint it or to adjust several things. But it was like kind of just not thinking, just doing. That's also making of.
Here you see the next image we worked on, and also you see how iconic photographs works. After they get repeated, then and used every time, they get also like a own life. So this scene from Saigon 75 is really similar to the scene in Kabul in 21. So the photographer probably also had this original photograph from Saigon in his mind, and also the people who see now this Kabul picture reminds to Saigon. So this is also for us a very important picture we worked on. And this is our version. And you see here also that we take the pictures in color, but many pictures are also in black and white. And so we always try to show the process and also try to get it black and white in the scene itself. So we paint it all in gray tones. In the back, you see like also these newspapers, and it's kind of a research, and there was also like the anniversary from this happening. In the next picture, you see a making of, where you also see the process we work, because at the beginning we kind of try out the proportions, the size, if it really works, because sometimes we work on a picture 2 months, and we just want to make sure after we started that it really works for us. So that's why we try that out with boxes, so we get a clue if this works. And also here the models we were able to buy it and didn't have to reconstruct these, but the pictures we took afterwards, the newer pictures, yeah, it's not able for us to buy anything, so we have to do everything by our own.
Yeah, that's not a break here in our conference. That's should you remind of a particular image? Maybe some of you have an image in your mind. It's Tiananmen Square from 89. This is our reconstruction. There were in total 4 photographers who shot this scene. I think the most famous is from Stuart Franklin, and we took this image, but we could also take another one. This image is very symbolic. It's has been used a lot of times here in Western Europe or in the Western world, but not in China. It's forbidden in China. It's also actually not in the book, because the book was printed in China, and so therefore we couldn't print it. The thing with the iconic photographs, the more the thing which JOJAKIM told you about this positive feedback, it's if the image is repeated again and again and again, and if there were like protests in the world, and you use the image to show it for this, you take the image and transform it to an icon. It's an icon for a change or like social rights. It could stand for a lot of things. And I think this particular image is very, very famous. And it's also the fight of David and Goliath, like the strong against the weak. And yeah. It was also done with model kits we ordered in eBay China. I can remember. It's an ironic thing.
The next image probably you also know. For us, it's a special one because it's one of the less images we saw on the TV, and we lived while it happened, because the other ones we just know from books. So, but also this image from 9/11 is not a classic iconic photograph, because I think the definition from iconic photograph changed, because now you have so many images from one event. So there's not this single image that stands for event. There's also from 9/11 the falling man. It's also really important. But I think we have chosen this image because it's really reduced. You have the nice blue sky, you have this plane, and you have this tower. So we have chosen this one. And also this is, I think, the third picture we made in this project. And it's yeah, I think you see also it's not accurate like the other ones, but we realized that it also works when we are not that detailed. It's it doesn't need like all these details for this picture. Yeah.
This is also a newer image. It's an image that we all remember when this happened. And that's also, yeah, you're more concerned about the history you see, I think. This was 2004 in the tsunami in Indonesia, the Indian Ocean. And this is one of thousands of images that were found on the internet. And a German magazine took this for the cover. And we have chosen it because it's also very reduced. And it's reduced to both sides. So you have the paradise and the hell on one image, and that's why we have chosen this image. And that's our reproduction. Here, it's the question how it goes in the future. So do we have in the future more and more iconic images that come from the coverage from every one of you? Like maybe we should take images from Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat. Or are there any no more any iconic photographs because there is too much of them? Yeah, we have no answer on this question, but we have a lot thought about this. And what we can say is that it always needs some time to set the moment down and to look again and again and again. That's the thing with the repetition, the positive feedback.
The next image is from Henri Cartier-Bresson. Also for us really interesting to reconstruct this image, because Bresson is famous for the moment in photography. And what we do is we take this moment and stage it in our studio. So this moment would stand in our studio forever if we wouldn't clean it. And the surrounding, what you see in our image, that seems to be a documentary, is also a little bit staged, because at the end we are photographers, and we study our surrounding and see what's there. So every object you see there is really important also for the picture. But yeah, it's a play between documentary and staging a moment of time. And yeah, here you see a little bit more of the surrounding. The water we had here is also epoxy hards. It's some kind of glue, and also the space here to the end. It's pretty large to work with different lights. And also here we had this challenge with the movement from that guy. Yeah, also you see in our picture, you see this
wire.
Yeah, the wire where the guy is attached. So it's sometimes we have to say, yeah, there's nothing made with Photoshop. I mean, we work digital, so we kind of optimize the contrast and maybe check the colors. But for us, it's really important that we see this moment in time in our studio. That's for us. It's a little bit the challenge, not to cheat with digital help, but with analog help. I mean, we're cheating all the time.
We go back to 1855. Roger Fenton, British photographer, went to document the Crimean War and took 2 photographs of this situation, one with less cannonballs and one with a little bit more cannonballs. And Errol Morris, the photo historian, he did research about this and found out that one of the images probably staged and the other one not. And he also found out that which one, because there is the movement of the sunlight and the shadows, and there is also the gravity, so the cannonballs would only roll down. And he proved that the photographer Roger Fenton, he staged the scene. So we have from the invention of photography, and this proof is from 1855, so a long time ago, we have the proof that since photography exists, staging of photography, or yeah, since there, staging of photography exists also. Here we have making of video. We have at the exhibition in Granoller, we have also the video stills here that shows a little bit more the process, how we did it. And we put the camera first on the tripod, and we take picture after picture, and every time we move something or paint something, and then we take another picture and overlay it with the computer. So that's our process, and at the end it's easy for us to do like a stop motion video.
The next picture is also pretty famous. It's by Robert Kappa. And also here, the moment in photography, also staging as a theme, if the scene is staged or not. There's some theories. For us, it's not important to choose these images because there are these theories. I mean, we choose these images because they're a part of the history, and they're really important in history of photography.
It's the only Spanish image we have reconstructed. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, here you see our final version, where we also worked with clay, and with the grass is some kind of fur, and also the clouds, the background. There are different kind of layers to make the cotton wool you see in the clouds more soft. So it's also was a process at the beginning where we really tried out what worked best. Yeah, and for the figures, we normally try to work with sometimes with a little bit wood or with wire, and around the wire we work with clay.
Another fake photography. No, it was just a joke if you're still awake. Yeah, I mean, you all know the Kubrick story and the conspiracy theories about this image, and yeah.
Nessie, also not true. At the end, there are all these fake images, but also interesting here. It was a really simple image, but I really like it. Maybe because we didn't work 2 months on it, but yeah, it's just plastic foil and cardboard, and it works, and everybody knows it, and I'm really surprised also, because sometimes when we were in Asia, these people didn't know all these images, but 2 weeks ago I was in Japan, and the people they knew that image pretty well. I was really surprised, but yeah, it's I like it.
This image is from Thomas Demand, the original one, and this is our reconstruction. He was on our list for a long time. He's a German artist. He also reconstructs newspaper images, but he always do it with paper. So he's really mad about paper. He does everything with paper, and his photographs were shown also very large at the exhibitions, and only at the second glance you see that it's made out of paper. And so it's kind of funny that we take an image that he made. So it was for us like one of the first time we did the image with the same material as the original photograph, because normally it's water, it's forest, and we have to reconstruct it. And now we could reconstruct paper as paper. So it's kind of a theoretic thing. But we are really fan of his work and admire him very much. And this is Bureau, a work from 95.
So now we are getting to the last image from our presentation, and yeah, Thomas Demand was the last picture we made for the project, and this was just before that. It's I don't know if people from Spain know this image. It's also a press image. It's made by Sebastian Knauer, 87. Sebastian Knauer was a journalist, and he found in Geneva Uwe Barschel was a German politician, and he found him dead in the bathtub, and took a picture of him. And also, this is our final version from Sebastian Knauer's image. And also here are these stories what really happened, because it's still not clear what happened, if it was a murder, if it was a suicide. So it's also interesting to see this picture after Thomas Demand, because also Thomas Demand worked on a picture from this picture with Uwe Barschel. And this picture, we try to go a little bit further with the project of icons. So here you see just a making of this scene. But what we did for exhibition in Munich, we took the whole setting in a box, in a wood box, and you see here, you see the model, and you have here, you have a mirror and lights. So what we did, we actually built a projector, like a camera lucida, and so we closed this thing, and we had a lens there in the hole. And when we turned on the light, we got a picture from the inside to a transparent paper. So it's kind of a projector we had, or what do you call it? Yeah, like a camera lucida or a camera obscura, but the opposite of a camera obscura. So yeah, we tried out to work with different presentation of the work, but yeah, we realized pretty quick that also there are like problems because of the blurriness. You need like much light, and yeah, it's we're still thinking about this idea because we like this presentation, but it makes it also really hard to present it in a room, because it has to be dark, and yeah. Okay, that's it. But we are here open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this. Ay, perdón. Muchísimas gracias por esta.
Thank you very much for this fascinating presentation. And now we'll see whether there are some questions. I would love to start. I've got several questions, but I don't want to use up all the time. I want the audience to ask questions too. It's very interesting when we look at your work to see how we start thinking about what we're seeing, the way we're seeing it, what is true, what we identify as fake. But it's very amusing to see how we believe that what surrounds the photograph in your studio is very real and documentary in the classic sense of the word. Even in black and white pictures, your preparation, even in your preparation, there is a play on all these elements. And there's a play between authenticity and what is fake. To what extent do you carry that? To what extent do you play with those elements for the spectator? How much is authentic and how much is sort of fake? How much is staged? You've mentioned this, but it's interesting to see to what extent you want to create this sense of doubt in the spectator.
Disculpa si estaba hablando muy rápido.
That's a very good question, and that's sorry, I have to stop this, otherwise. That's, I guess, the thing when the whole work is done. So when we have the inner part of the image, we can do like I forgot the name. So there is the work to do and the rest. The rest is the surrounding, like the free parts, and the inner part is really hard work. It's the time where we are, like for this image, it was not about that much time, but we had this footprint made of wood, and we had to do it in one time because you can't retouch the material. The material was cement, and you cannot retouch anything, so you have to do it by one. And we did it, I think, 150 times. And when we had this, we could do the rest. So the outer parts of the images were just fun. And there he comes with some ideas, I come with ideas, and sometimes we were tired because we had to do so much work for the inner part, and the outer part are not that good. And the ideas of the surrounding is to take the things that were authentic, as you said. So we want to show materials, we want to show tools which we used to produce the illusion. So we don't want to hide anything. And if someone comes and asks, hey, how did you do that? How did you do this? We always say, look at the picture and you'll find out by yourself. And maybe I go to
But sometimes also things happen by accident, which we afterward really like, because go back to the moon.
Oh.
Where's the moon? There. So in down in the picture, you see these footprints from Converse shoes I wore at that day. And yeah, that happened by accident, but we really liked it, and so we kept it there. So, I mean, at the end, we are photographers, and when we say, okay, let's show the surrounding, but we know where to crop the image. So it's always this, our view on this scene. So. It's interesting about thinking about the documentary part of this image.
Yeah, and the Vietnam evacuation is also one image that I can show something. The surrounding with the newspapers, etc. This was in our studio. It was lying around, but it was not there. So we placed it surrounding our reconstruction. So we are staging the surrounding quite much. Yeah.
Quizás simplemente una cuestión.
Maybe
más
just another question, which is not minor, before I pass the floor to the audience. How much have the pictures and works of Joan Fontcuberta, how much have they influenced you? Because there's almost a quote from the book, the photograph of Lake Ness, which appears in one of his essays. I don't want to make it difficult for you. But I think there is a kind of special presence of all the works, the artists, criticisms that developed after the 1980s within what was called, perhaps erroneously, postmodernism, Sherry Levine. There's a trend towards recreation, which became very strong after the 80s. Did this influence you when you were studying? Were you interested, especially interested? Did it suggest the idea of simulation, or did this come from a different place?
I got a translation, so I
don't
answer.
have the translation.
The volume was
Maybe I was on the wrong channel, sorry.
no, but no, I understood it. So we know John's work. So obviously we are a little bit influenced by him and many others, because I think we are probably influenced by all these artists we like. So during our studies, Jeff Wall was really important. I mean, I think more like these classic staging photographers, not these what do you call it? Not this kind of work we are doing now, but we also officially advise a Swiss artist what we really admire, and we are also influenced by them. I think there are so many we are, and maybe also some that I don't really know that we are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Joan.
Yeah.
Sí, por alusiones.
Good.
No, efectivamente los has puesto en un...
Yes, you've mentioned me, and you've put them in a bit of a difficult situation, I think, when you mentioned me. But this is more than a question. It's a series of comments that I would like to have your reaction about them. Cartier-Bresson, you've shown a picture of his that you remade, spoke about the decisive instant in photography, as we all know. An instant in time. I think that your work reproduces this idea of the decisive instant with another fundamental concept, which is decisive space. So it's the opposition between field and counterfield, what the camera sees and what surrounds the camera. And I think that in that regard, your work is not made up of slices of time, but slices of the surroundings of space. And in that respect, I think that your work is very important in the context of what we're talking about, which is the fourth landscape. How do we construct a model based on the perception we have of the environment? But since I've mentioned Cartier-Bresson, at the Saint-Lazare station, that picture, I have thought about something else. In your work, there is always the same procedure. You remake in your studio, you remake certain well-known iconic images, but there are different categories. There is a category which is pictures that have reached astronomical prices, very expensive. Then there are others that are pictures that, if we close our eyes, they're part of our memory, our collective memory, and the collective memory of the 20th century, Hiroshima, Vietnam, etc. And then there's another category, which is pictures that have directly to do with the history of photography, the masterworks that were published and that are published in all the textbooks of photography, or that are part of the most important collections of the history of photography. If we look at Newhall's book, practically all the pictures that you dealt with are in that book. And that third category is more sophisticated, I would say, because it has to do with, or it requires that the spectator have a certain knowledge. For instance, the Man Ray or La Boche nudes are perhaps not so well known as the Hiroshima bomb or 9/11. So that category is more aimed at a more select audience that requires knowledge. They need to have knowledge of the history of photography. But there's another part that I think is perhaps the most interesting, which is the part of your work that includes remakes of remakes, fictions of fictions. For instance, in the case of Thomas Demman, who's an artist that reconstructs, you do a remake of his remake. So it's a further turn, another turn of the screw. Or the case of Kappa. Kappa's picture today, it's been studied, and we are almost forensically sure that it was staged. But, and I want to finish with it with Cartier-Bresson, the image by Cartier-Bresson, I don't know, but I have been told that if you look at the negatives of that picture, the negatives of that picture that was taken at the Saint-Lazare station, you see that the person jumping repeated the jump several times. So it was in part at least staged. There was a certain collaboration between the subject and the photographer. So that's a magnificent picture to illustrate that fourth category, which is fiction of fiction or a remake of a remake. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, well said. I think just for the categories, at the beginning when we started this project, we didn't really thought about the categories. At the beginning, we, after 10 or 15 images, we realized that we only had catastrophes, we had explosions, and then when we started to work on the book, then we realized that, yeah, we have to think a little bit more about these categories. And also, yeah, there are some images that are not well known by people who didn't study photography. But for us, the project is about seeing. It's to motivate the people to look carefully. A curator described our work with nice words, because she said it's like when you walk and you're stumbling, and then you start to think about walking again. And it's a little bit, she said, it was looking at our pictures. So you see a picture that you think you know, but you're stumbling about the surroundings, about the tools, and then you start, yeah, what I'm doing, what do I see, and I thought it was a nice description of our work. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like also to thank you for this comment. And about the stories. You told one from Cartier-Bresson, from the Saint-Lazare, and there are every image comes with his story, and we try to show this for the viewer in our book. The book is every time with one image on one side, and on the other side you have a text, what happened at this time, what's showed on the original photograph. And so you have always a story behind the image, and I think this is also one important thing of iconic images, that there is a certain story connected to the image.
Sí, yo también quería hacer.
Yes, I wanted to offer you a comment. Over the next few weeks, I'm going to visit with students your exhibition, and I'm very curious to see to what extent these pictures are still iconic for my students. And I say because I know from experience that practically all the pictures that we've seen, except maybe 9/11, are unknown to many, many people. And my students, as you've said, there are iconic events that produce a huge amount of images like the Ukraine, but pictures are no longer a single picture. There are thousands of pictures today. And I wonder if a book like yours is not offering these souvenir pictures from the 20th century to a new generation, or to new generations. A lot of these younger people, it will be the first time that they will probably see these pictures. Some, like the one based on Thomas de Man's work, are not part of the collective imagination, but they will be. When I saw that Thomas de Man was in your list, I've had to reevaluate his role in the history of photography. So you are also producing icons of the future. Have you had any feedback from the younger generations about these pictures? Do they know them? Are they familiar with these pictures that are part of the iconic legacy of photography?
Yeah, I mean, we were surprised that also younger people know many pictures. We had like a presentation for kids. I think they were 14 in Geneva, and they knew almost every picture. I mean, not the art images like Eggleston, but like the press images, they knew. But it was a good school, so.
No, preguntaba si hay más preguntas en el
Are
público.
there more questions in the room or online? No. Good. I wanted to ask you, the book came out in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, but I feel that you continue to work. Is the series still ongoing, or are you involved in a new project now?
We stopped with the project kind of, because we had quite much to do with exhibitions and traveling also. And we had another very big project which we nearly finished now, but we'd like to take again the project into work. So it's not finished. We like to do some iconic photographs more. Yeah.
To keep it open, dejarlo abierto.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So to keep it open, yes. John? Yes, I would ask you all day. I would ask questions all day, but I don't want to take up too much time. Another thing that I'm interested in, and in this case it is a question, to what extent the question of miniaturization, scale, proportions, reducing reality to a small size in order to control it and dominate it, To what extent is that issue important, conceptually important in your work? Or is this just an idea of mine, a projection of mine?
I would say it's a practical question that we go to miniatures, because if you want to reconstruct landscape, you have to do it anyway in miniature. We have reconstructed the milk drop from ADRIAN, and this is
The opposite way.
Yeah. But I think there were quite interesting thoughts in this, because you could do a work about scaling up or down, and for us it's mostly a practical question.
¿Alguna pregunta allá al final?
Any more questions? There's a question at the back, is there? Hello, I've got a question. I'm curious. It's a personal thing about the way you work. I think that in some cases you've said that you have to clean up afterwards. And I was possibly thinking that you have a lot of space and you keep all these sets. But I understand that once you've finished, you clean everything away, do you? And is the making of is only on the photo, only on the video? But it makes me feel sad when I think that you have to clean all this up afterwards and it disappears. Do you have a ritual? When do you decide to clean up and how do you do it? Have you kept any of these sets as they were without touching them?
Yeah, our studio is not small, but it could be much bigger. So that's the reason why we can't really keep everything. We keep like some little parts where we think, okay, it's important to keep it, also like a trophy from history. But yeah, the time when we started to clean is, we don't have a ritual for that, but we have to make sure that we are really happy with the picture. So we probably leave it for 1 week, and after we finished, we make like a documentation about it. But I think at the end we are photographers, and when we have our picture, then we are satisfied, and then we can clean.
It's also very much bricolage. It's not really good made. So the models in the early beginning, they were like standing for 1 week and then they would fall apart, because we use a lot of tape and hot glue or something like this. And especially this image was, there was a bulb in the cotton wool that gives the light for the image. And the bulb produced heat, and everything fell apart while shooting the image. So this was really like self-destroying. But it's an interesting question, and Thomas Demand, the German artist, he destroys the paperwork afterwards totally. But it's paper, it's a little bit different, yeah.
I wanted to ask you about, maybe it's a little difficult questions, but normally there are not perdón, estaba hablando en inglés, disculpas.
I'm sorry, I was speaking English.
Vale.
Okay. In your, when you choose your pictures, when you choose the pictures, I think there's a choice. There's a picture, I don't know whether you've shown it, which is the picture that was taken in Abu Ghraib, which is a picture, very strong, very tough, very hard, very painful picture. It's a kind of exception, an exception. When you look through the book, within the choices of iconic pictures, but the one of Nick Colt, or perhaps that one and the one by Nick Colt are perhaps exceptions. How do you deal with this idea when these pictures are reproduced or are seen in public spaces? What role do these harder, tougher pictures play in your work? Where the camera becomes almost a weapon.
Well, the photographs exist anyway, so we have not taken those photographs by ourselves. We just repeat them, and I think therefore it's not a problem for us to reconstruct it. There is one issue with the fake question. So we always say it's a fake. And if you show a really bad image, for example, we have also the KZ Auschwitz, the I don't know the word in English, KZ, concentration camp from Second World War. And then if you have all the discussion with the fake, it's really, really important for us, but also for, yeah, that's the whole message, that the image has his content, has his context, sorry. It's important that you keep the context correct, and that is not only the image that is isolated and printed in conspiracy theories, and then it's the concentration camp image that would give the wrong direction, I think. And the personal thing is with the photograph of Nick Ut or Abu Ghraib. I think it's a question of the reconstruction. So for us, it was really at the beginning not possible to reconstruct it, because if you reconstruct the landscape, it looks funny, maybe a little bit ridiculous, but it looks funny. And if you do it with people that were injured, it's no way. Yeah. And a funny thing, no, not a funny thing, an interesting thing about the Abu Ghraib image, I visited the new photography museum in Lausanne, in Switzerland. They have a new building, and there was a collection image, a collection showed about the history of photography, and I saw the Abu Ghraib in a museum, in a proper museum. That's the first time for me to see this internet image in a museum. I don't know, have you seen it in a museum? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In your book, there are very few women, no icons from women photographers.
Yes, sorry. No, there's only one. There's this, two, yeah. Natalie Forbes and Penny Smith, yeah.
Not really famous. Well, at least, well, the image from the Exxon Valdez maybe is less known as a photographer.
Yeah, I think it's because of the time, because many pictures are from a specific time, and yeah, that's there are just less women, I think. but we will work on it.
Si no hay más preguntas.
Well, if there are no more questions, John has summarized this presentation marvelously well. So I will pass the floor to him to close. Well, it's a question of closing the event formally and officially. I want to close the cycle of lectures that we've finished today with our two friends here, CORTIS and SONDEREGGER. In this cycle of panoramic, we have wanted to speak about the fourth landscape and think about theory, reflection about this topic in four directions, different directions, and which cover the wealth of material that we have and how rich this concept is. First of all, we spoke about critical approaches to landscape, and at the same time we have new media, new algorithms, AI, which are supplying us with instruments and mechanisms that allow us to open up new lines of research, other forms of building and constructing fourth landscapes. Then we had another provocative proposal from, who was it? I can't remember now. Who was it? Emmanuel Coccia. I forget names. Emmanuel Coccia, who gave us a very curious proposal regarding the way we project identity using landscape and how we can also establish interaction, and there are sometimes dialectical contradictions between the design of fashion, for instance, and the virtual surroundings of fashion. It was a very clear lecture. It was not really cryptical, it was not really difficult to understand, and it was really interesting, and it's worthwhile. If you're interested, you can revisit the lecture, because all these lectures are available on the web of the Mafre Foundation. Then yesterday we had a magnificent presentation by Maida. Thank you very much, Maida, for your presentation yesterday. There's an exhibition of Maida at Granollers, curated by our colleague in Granollers, in the same way that Andrés Hispano is curating this current exhibition, and we have to thank all these people for their proposals, and we have to thank the artists for enriching our world. But Maida spoke about violence and how violence has an influence on landscape and our surroundings. Her lecture and her pictures really, really moved us very deeply. At least they moved me very deeply, and I was really overwhelmed. And thank you, Maida, for that magnificent presentation. And then finally, we've had another masterpiece, another master lecture. And our friends here, I really am very fond of, and have been for a long time, because what they do is not just visually attractive, it has a great philosophical depth. It can be interpreted in a wealth of ways, very pedagogical regarding picture, image, fiction, truth. I really encourage you to visit this exhibition, but all the other exhibitions in the panoramic program, some in Barcelona, others in Granollers. And I encourage you to continue taking part in these proposals, in these expositions, in these panel discussions, and different events that are part of the panoramic program. And I invite you to continue to come next year to the next edition of our program, which we can tell you about. We're going to devote it to portrait and post-portrait, portraiture and post-portraiture, the human face, facial recognition technologies, aesthetic surgery. We're going to talk about all those things which are producing a new way of doing portraits. And I must thank the MAFRE Foundation, the KBR room, the technicians that have made our work possible, and all our team. And I want to encourage you to continue to follow us in this center, KBR, and there's a very interesting series of lectures directed by Joan Boada on our archives, and I also encourage you to follow them. So that's the end. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.